a place where families harvest with hope, only to watch their produce return weeks later canned, labeled in foreign languages, and sold back to them at triple the price. For decades, this was the quiet tragedy of Burkina Faso's farmers. But not anymore. In 2024, something radical happened. In the heart of the Sahel. A red revolution began not with protests or violence, but with the hum of machines and the scent of crushed tomatoes. Under the leadership of Captain Ibrahim Traoré, Burkina Faso built a factory. Not just any factory, an $8 million agro-industrial landmark that flipped the food system upside down. This is not a story about tomatoes. This is a story about sovereignty, about how one of Africa's poorest countries began rewriting the rules one fruit at a time. Before the factory walls rose, before the first can of tomato paste rolled off the line, there was waste, endless, gut-wrenching waste. Across the dusty roads of Bobo-Dioulasso and beyond, farmers worked the soil with calloused hands and stubborn hope. They planted tomatoes by the acre, thousands of crates each season. Red gold, they called it. But gold only matters if it holds value. And in Burkina Faso, these tomatoes didn't. At the peak of every harvest, the markets flooded. Prices collapsed. Traders, those with power and middleman deals, squeezed the farmers down to the last franc. What couldn't be sold rotted in the sun. What survived often ended up exported, processed abroad, then shipped back to Burkina Faso shelves in shiny tins, stamped with foreign labels and triple the price. It was an absurd circle. Grow the food, lose the profit, buy it back. For decades, this was the trap. A trap built not by nature, but by design, by global trade systems that favored raw export over local production, by decades of underinvestment, by an economy trained to depend on others for what it already had in abundance. In rural households, the impact was brutal. Families couldn't afford the very tomatoes they grew. Children ate imported paste while the backyard yield went unsold. The money that should have built schools, clinics, and futures leaked out of the country with every shipping container. And in the capital, elites imported European brands, tomato paste from Italy, sauces from France. Foreign quality became the standard. Local food was seen as cheap, disposable. But the real cost wasn't economic, it was psychological. A silent erosion of pride. A message that said your labor isn't enough, your land isn't enough, you are not enough, year after year. Burkina Faso farmers watched their red harvests shrivel under the sun of indifference, until one administration decided the cycle had to end. But the cycle didn't just end on its own. It was broken. By a leader who saw past the numbers and into the pain behind them. Captain Ibrahim Traoré didn't just inherit a crumbling food system, he declared war on it. And the first battlefield tomatoes, it began not with fanfare, but with a blueprint, a plan to build Burkina Faso's first state-backed tomato processing plant in the heart of an agro-zone where the red fruit once rotted by the ton, not as a token gesture, not a PR stunt, but a calculated strike against decades of economic dependence. The price tag, $8 million. But the real value, immeasurable. This wasn't just a factory, it was a statement. A promise that Burkina Faso would no longer export its potential and import its identity. Located in the fertile region of Bobo-Dioulasso, the plant was engineered to do one thing: flip the food chain. Turn fragile harvests into stable products. Turn waste into wealth. Turn labor into dignity. And it was built with Burkinabe hands. Local engineers, local welders, local cement. Every brick laid was a message. We can build what we need. And they did. The plant now processes tons of tomatoes every day, turning them into paste, puree, sauces ready for domestic shelves and regional markets. No longer will Burkina Faso buy back what it already grows. No longer will Burkinabe children eat foreign paste while local produce dies in the field. This is food sovereignty, in motion, in steel, in flame. But the impact doesn't stop at the factory gate. Over 150 direct jobs were created in the plant itself: machine operators, quality control specialists, lab technicians. But that's just the surface. The real revolution is in the supply chain: crate makers, transporters, packaging producers, farmers. For every kilo of tomato processed locally, money stays local. And for every family supplying the plant, a new income stream begins, not dependent on traders or foreign buyers, but on a system built for them. It's not just about economics, it's about power. Because now, Burkina Faso controls the value chain from soil to shelf, and more importantly, they control the narrative. No more begging, no more waiting, no more importing what the land already provides. This is TRAORE'S vision in practice, not just resisting imperialism with words, but replacing it with infrastructure: tangible, productive, sovereign. The factory is also an educational tool. New agricultural training centers now work hand in hand with the plant, teaching farmers how to plant smarter, harvest longer, and feed processing demand. Young people are being trained not just to grow food, but to engineer entire food systems. And perhaps most striking of all, this project was not funded by the West. No IMF strings, no EU conditions, no foreign consultants pocketing half the budget. It was financed through state-backed investment, supported by BRICS-aligned partners, a new network of allies who respect sovereignty instead of strangling it. Because for TRAORE, sovereignty isn't a slogan. It's a tomato plant. It's jobs that don't migrate, food that doesn't expire, dignity that doesn't get outsourced. And while other leaders cut ribbons on donor-funded projects designed to impress foreigners, Burkina Faso built a factory designed to feed its people. Efficient, quiet, revolutionary. The plant is now running at full capacity. Its red gold products are on store shelves across the country. Families recognize the new labels. Kids eat local paste with pride. Farmers no longer feel betrayed by their own harvest. It's not just food, it's a new future. And this is just the beginning. Because when a nation learns to process tomatoes, the next question becomes, what else can we build? A factory doesn't stand alone. It breathes. It pulses. And when it's built right, it creates an entire ecosystem around it, one that stretches from the soil of the villages to the shelves of the cities. That's exactly what's happening in Burkina Faso. Since the tomato processing plant opened its doors, more than tomatoes have been transformed. An entire network of people, professions, and possibilities has come alive. Let's start at the root: the farmers. For generations, farming was survival. Backbreaking work with unpredictable returns. A good season meant a small profit. A bad season meant hunger. There was no guarantee, no system, just chance. But now, everything's changed. With the factory in place, contracts have replaced chaos. Farmers no longer throw their harvests into uncertain markets. They grow on demand with guaranteed buyers, fixed prices, and scheduled delivery. That's security. That's planning. That's dignity. And they're not doing it alone. Local agricultural cooperatives, many led by women, are being trained to organize, negotiate, and supply collectively. Extension officers now travel to the fields with calendars, not orders. They teach optimal planting cycles, introduce improved tomato varieties, and help farmers meet the factory's quality standards. Knowledge is being localized, power is being distributed, and while the tomatoes grow, so does the infrastructure around them. Before, rural transport meant donkey carts and hope. Now, new rural roads are being built to connect farms directly to the processing plant, cutting travel time, reducing spoilage, and opening trade routes that once felt mythical. Young men who once left villages for distant cities in search of work are now becoming logistics coordinators, truck drivers, mechanics, all trained and employed within their own provinces. The tomato doesn't just carry flavor anymore, it carries opportunity. And it's not just about moving the crop. Packaging companies have emerged nearby, using locally produced crates and containers. Cold storage units are being introduced to extend shelf life. Small workshops now produce the uniforms, gloves, and protective gear needed for food safety compliance. Every step in the chain from seed to store is becoming a local value node. But there's something deeper happening here. Something slower, quieter. A mindset is shifting. Schools in the region are starting to teach new subjects, not theory but skills, food technology, agribusiness, solar-powered irrigation. Girls and boys who once dreamed only of leaving are now sketching blueprints of machines they'll build for the next factory, because they've seen it, touched it, walked past it. The tomato plant isn't just an economic machine, it's an educational landmark, a symbol. Parents tell their children, "You see that building? We built that. That's ours." And that ownership matters. When people believe they are part of something bigger, something that works for them, not against them, they protect it. They improve it. They fight for it. That's why community leaders and local elders have been brought into the governance model. Town halls are being held, feedback loops created. This isn't development dropped from the sky, it's co-created infrastructure. Even the waste is being reused. Tomato skins and seeds are turned into organic fertilizer. Water used in the processing cycle is being treated and diverted for irrigation. It's a circular system. Nothing wasted. Everything reimagined. And in the middle of it all, a sense of hope. Hope that your work matters, that your land has worth, that your future isn't something you flee from but build into. Burkina Faso's tomato ecosystem isn't perfect. There are challenges, logistics bottlenecks, equipment maintenance, climate shocks. But for the first time in decades, the country isn't waiting for solutions from abroad. It's designing them, growing them, building them. The tomato plant was the first domino, and now, an entire system is standing up behind it. The machines hum, the tomatoes roll, the cans are sealed, labeled, and boxed. But what's happening in Burkina Faso can't be measured in production metrics alone. Because this isn't just about tomato paste, it's about power. For the first time in decades, Burkina Faso is feeding itself not just with calories, but with confidence. This factory, this ecosystem, this movement, it all signals something far greater, the return of food sovereignty. For too long, African nations have been told that progress comes in the form of foreign brands, foreign aid, foreign expertise, that their own food grown in their own soil by their own people wasn't valuable until it was processed somewhere else and sold back to them with a higher price tag and a European name. But now, Burkina Faso is flipping that script. Every can of tomato paste that comes off the line is a declaration. We don't need to import what we already grow. We don't need to beg for what we can build. This is the new face of independence, economic independence. Because when food is processed locally, money stays local, supply chains are national, jobs are domestic, and wealth circulates inward, not outward. A single factory might not make Burkina Faso rich overnight, but it interrupts the leak. It halts the drain. It rewires the flow. And that's how empires are built, not by waiting for wealth, but by stopping the loss. This factory, backed not by Western donors, but by the will of the state and alliances rooted in sovereignty, is proof that development doesn't have to mean dependence. It can mean strategy. It can mean structure. It can mean the slow, deliberate building of a nation that owns its future instead of renting it. And in this moment, something even deeper is happening. A redefinition of national identity. The world rarely pays attention to Burkina Faso. When it does, the headlines are about coups, conflict, crisis. But now, the spotlight is shifting not because of tragedy, but because of vision. This tomato plant is being studied by neighboring countries. Ministers from the Sahel are visiting, farmers from Mali, Niger, and Togo are asking, "How did you do it?" And Burkinabe leaders are answering, with courage, with cooperation, with belief. Captain Ibrahim Traore's vision isn't just infrastructural, it's psychological. He's challenging a generation of Burkinabe to stop seeing their country as weak, poor, or behind, to instead see it as sovereign, self-directed, and sacred. In speeches, he doesn't talk about aid packages. He talks about dignity. He reminds the youth that their hands can build more than roads, that their dreams can fill more than notebooks, that their land so often dismissed as dry and limited is in fact full of potential. And here, in this red-gold revolution, that potential is becoming real. The tomatoes are no longer rotting in silence. They're speaking. They're speaking in factories, in school curriculums, in jobs and training centers and cross-border trade agreements. And what they're saying is simple. We are enough. Burkina Faso is not waiting to be saved. It is saving itself, one crate at a time. In the end, it wasn't the aid packages that changed Burkina Faso. It wasn't the speeches, the promises, or the foreign conferences. It was a factory, a tomato plant, a vision forged in sweat, not speeches in planning, not pity, and that small red fruit, once left to rot by the roadside, now carries a message across the continent. Africa doesn't need to be saved. It needs to be allowed to rise. Captain Ibrahim Traoré didn't wait for the world's permission. He didn't beg for better terms. He didn't ask for leniency. He built infrastructure, built belief, built a new story. And in doing so, he showed what's possible when a nation invests in itself, when it chooses food over dependency, dignity over donation, and future over fear. This is not just about Burkina Faso anymore. It's a blueprint, a model for Niger, Mali, Chad, Togo, and beyond. A model for any African nation still trapped in the cycle of raw exports and finished imports, still dependent on structures that were never meant to benefit them. This is the beginning of something far bigger, because real sovereignty doesn't come with a flag. It comes with a factory, with a bank, with a school, with a dam, with a dream executed. And if Burkina Faso can do it against the odds, under pressure, in silence, then what's stopping the rest of Africa? The answer is nothing. Nothing but the belief that we cannot. And Traoré is tearing that belief down one project at a time. So now we ask, what if this tomato plant isn't just infrastructure, but a mirror? What if it's showing us who we've always been capable of becoming? Africa is watching. The West is watching. And history is taking notes. If you believe more people should see stories like this, stories of Black leadership, resilience, and revolution, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. This is just episode 1 of our new series on Ibrahim Traoré's development projects. Next, we'll explore the $120 million highway project that's opening new trade routes and shaking up West Africa's geopolitical map. Until then, remember, true independence is built, never borrowed. And in Burkina Faso, the building has just begun.